What are your little dungeon mastering quirks? Let us know in the comments below. Today's sponsor is History of Heroes. Come witness the backstories of up-and-coming adventurers, hand-illustrated and dramatically narrated by the Forever DM, from before they made their first appearance in the best available. Link in the description. You read the title. What are the little things that make your DMing different? The little house rules that you invented. How do you communicate secretly with your players? Do you hand out notes or take them aside from the table? Do you have a familiar with you while you play? A reoccurring NPC you like to put in your campaigns? Do you use leitmotifs for special NPCs? Do you cosplay? Make costumes to act like the hooded, strange, menacing divine figure setting the rules of the world? Whatever little detail is fun for you, and sometimes for the players. What makes you, the DM, you? Here are some of my friends' quirks that I borrowed. Whenever I communicate something official on our WhatsApp or Discord group, I will use a mentor-like NPC and say the message the way they would. Currently, my Poke role players receive their information from Wigglytuff, beginning the message with "friend of mine" and ending with "Yom-ta!" When I finished my exams, Chadot informed them of how the guild's former member passed her exams with tremendous glory, and that they all better be as accomplished as she is. The NPC in-game obviously doesn't know anything. I use specific video game soundtracks to set the tone of the session, and sometimes the campaign. I will try to find leitmotifs to indicate the importance of a character discreetly. They might catch it, or not. The first adventure I ran was inspired by a quest in Dragon Quest, so I only used music from the series. I like to put little texts about the lore that the players can find, kind of like in Baldur's Gate 3 and Witcher 3. They might be linked to some plot, or they might not. I send them directly to the player who was curious enough, and they might read them, or not. And I love familiars too. If your character has a complex and deep relationship with their familiar, and you intend to roleplay with it, the familiar is intelligent and can telepathically talk to you using actual words. I do this because a DM of mine allowed me to get such a feat during our COS campaign, and it really elevated the game. The attachment must be real though, which means I won't accept blatant abuse of that rule. Your familiar is your friend, coworker, or pet, not a tool. It's not my original idea, but something I adopted years ago. Critical inspiration. If a player or character scores a crit, they may choose an ally that witnessed it to gain inspiration. Keeps combat exciting as everyone is super invested in inspiration that they otherwise forget about. And the occasional advantage isn't game-breaking. I doubt this is very special, but I often say, give me a spot or survival check, whichever you prefer. Or gather information, sense motive, or diplomacy, whatever might apply. This lets a PC play to their strengths rather than being terrible half the time, just because the task is arbitrarily a bit more like a skill they don't have. Sometimes I'll say, spot check and add your survival to it, in which case I'll probably increase the DC, but it allows their various related focuses to help out. Once, I had a situation where I said, you have an unknown but fixed number of rounds until bad thing. You need a cumulative strength check total of 300, so you each roll each round. And if the rolling total hits 300 before bad thing, you succeed as a group. A constant favorite homebrew rule I have is for vicious mockery. A player can choose to have the enemy roll the saving throw or roleplay an insult in character. The entire table then votes via thumbs up or thumbs down, myself included, on whether it was good. If at least half the table gives a thumbs up, vicious mockery succeeds. If everyone at the table gives a thumbs up, it's an automatic critical. I've used this at several tables, and it's been a great success every time. It adds an extra fun dynamic, and I've seen players work out some great generic insults out of game to use later. It started as a gag, but it's become one of my favorite ways to encourage little RP moments and player interaction both in and out of the game. In the character and place descriptions I give, I always include a very small, seemingly unimportant detail that actually ties into the plot. When the big reveal happens, it makes the moment even grander as the players will realize all the signs were there the whole time. They just never noticed. And if they do notice, the significance of each little thing makes them feel proud for figuring it out and outsmarting me. My secret sauce is probably striving for a more cinematic and narrative style of game. First, after climactic milestones in the story, I make sure to include meaningful vignettes for each player, where they can interact with NPCs or other PCs with whom they've established significant rapport, or for whom their actions have had a significant impact. These scenes can range from receiving gifts to revelations about their backstories that set up their next character arc, to deepening relationships with NPCs and so on. Second, if I know what pop culture touchstones, songs, anime or video game references, etc., are important to individual players, I try to weave those into the story. Some examples. We had a long-time player who was absent for a year, but was finally able to return, though only online. Their paladin was a homage to Dante from Devil May Cry, so I set their arrival scene to bury the light and had them surprise the party by joining what had been a losing battle just as the first chorus started. I had them waiting in Discord on an account disguised as the music bot. A few players who recognized the DMC reference and that player's character perked up as the music built, and when that player joined the fray in dramatic fashion, the whole table went nuts. One of my top 5 proudest moments as a DM. At the end of our last campaign, knowing that several of my players are fans of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I took a page from Abria's book and did a "what you don't see" scene for the outro. I set the scene to the start of Roundabout by Yes, and had a filter animation so that just as the guitar intro finished, the VTT went sepia and the "to be continued" arrow flew into place. It was a lot of work and took practice, but the JoJo fans loved it, and even the players unfamiliar with it were like, "Oh shit, to be continued?" During the Witchlight finale, I gave the party a Bastion's Happy Flight tour over Prismere in Ziblinia's carriage, where they got to see all the NPC friends they'd made, Mudlump and Dubforgale getting along, unicorns racing, pixies flying alongside, etc. During everyone's vignettes, I made sure to use musical callbacks to themes from earlier in the campaign, all the way back to their intros in Session 1. I draw illustrations for my campaign, but I don't do one for every session, and the importance of the subject has no bearing on whether I draw them. For example, I'll draw a hyper-powerful plot-crucial NPC, and I'll also draw a throwaway character who's just there for flavor. That way, the players can't just say, "This has a drawing, so it must be important." They actually have to put on their thinking caps and figure out how important whatever I'm drawing attention to really is. At the start of the session, I put the drawing face down on the board in Tabletop Simulator so the party knows there will be a drawing this session. But they don't know when I'll flip the picture face up. I base my worlds on reputation. I keep a list of my players' actions and assign positive or negative karma points that determine how the world treats them. If they rack up more negative points, they'll start to notice that NPCs avoid them, jack up shop prices, or even sell them out to the authorities. If they hit a certain threshold of negative points, some NPCs will straight up attack them on sight. They'll also have a harder time telling who the good guys or bad guys are, and might even get manipulated into joining the villains, only to have it revealed at the end of the campaign all the atrocities that they helped commit. On the flip side, if they earn positive karma, NPCs will be friendlier, offer discounts or even free items, and sometimes lie to authorities to protect the players. If their karma gets high enough, they'll be celebrated everywhere they go, showered with gifts and help. They can even earn special abilities, like calling on NPCs they've met in the past to come help them fight bosses. Basically, my players can do an evil run or a good run, and experience deep, meaningful changes to the world based on their actions. I really like that. At the end of each session, I have the players nominate each other for inspiration. The group spends a few minutes calling out memorable moments from their fellow players, and the nominees have a chance to earn an extra D8 to a D20 roll in the following session. Having the players highlight each other's best moments has vastly improved party cooperation, and this is a great way to help players stay engaged with the session, too. Casters with Find Familiar in my settings can choose to let their familiars talk. Anyone can make an Arcana check to cast a scroll, even non-casters. I also keep 4 specific tools behind my screen. 3 60-second sand timers, which I use to measure 2 things: time for player-focused RP and combat timers. If you make it to the 3rd timer, your turn is paused and I'll circle back to you. If you consistently finish on the 1st timer, you earn inspiration. And the 4th and most important item, a little bellhop bell behind my DM screen. It's sharp and attention-grabbing without being too harsh. Really snaps the focus back to the game. If my player uses heroic inspiration to impose disadvantage, I'll show the rolls if it makes a difference. For example, near the end of the most recent fight, the druid used heroic inspiration to give the enemy combat disadvantage. I rolled a 6 and a 20. The druid needed a miss to survive, so I showed the table. This way, my druid player learned that their strategy paid off as they avoided near certain death from a critical hit. Do note, my players are relatively new to the game, so there's still a bit of learning. I also treat things like perception and insight as more passive than usual. If a player doesn't ask to look around but plays a perceptive character, I might tell them, "Draco notices that something feels off in this room. At first glance, he can't quite place it. What would you like Draco to do?" This gives a player a chance to look for a trap or secret door instead of blindly walking by, especially if they've invested in being good at finding things like that. I still have them actively make their roll and let the dice decide, but this way they don't have to pause and check every 10 feet. Well, I actually use passive perception. Who can tell? In general, in 5th edition, I've started to use a lot of skills passively to establish the baseline knowledge and abilities of each PC. It works well. Outside of that, I let my players have as many animals as they want, but I'm going to roleplay them. The animals are safe from harm as long as the players don't use them in combat or similar situations. Players also get a starting minor magic item, something that fits their character. It's not necessarily powerful, but flavorful. I give my players pieces of paper for their magic items. These papers have some art, a description of the item, and its abilities. My personal touch is a line of lore-rich flavor text, like you'd find on a gun in Destiny 2 or a card from Magic the Gathering. I've had 2 favorite lines so far. The first is from an elemental gem that summons a water elemental. "Is the elemental plane of water wet?" The second is from a D&D Destiny game I DM'd a while ago. For a worm soaked in void energy that I was giving to my players as an exotic weapon catalyst. "Sometimes all that is left to consume is hunger itself." The information on these items is considered information the characters themselves receive, so it lets me do a bit of lore dumping without bogging down the fun or making the game all about my world. It keeps the focus centered on the players. Orwano the Lost and his strangely familiar loot. I wanted an excuse to have a shop in a dungeon, but it's hard to do in a way that actually makes sense. Glares at Etri from God of War. So, I came up with Orwano, who ended up becoming a really fun side character. Orwano is a Morkoth, who has been hoarding loot for millennia. He's happy to sell or trade his goods, using the resources to acquire even more interesting pieces for his collection. However, he once acquired the wrong thing and angered the wrong entity. This mysterious figure cursed Orwano to be doomed to bounce back and forth between dimensions until that particular piece of loot is returned. The problem is, Orwano has no idea which piece of loot it is. So, as a result, he'll randomly pop into dungeon spaces. I usually tie the dimensional energies to something about one of the players, which is why he always appears to them. and offer generally basic supplies. My favorite gag is that he's always whining about how hard done by he is, having to return treasures that sound suspiciously familiar. Things like a boring gold ring that makes you invisible, a useless sword stuck in a stone, an angry fox made of fire. They should be thanking Orwano for keeping it! A shield with a star trapped in a block of ice, and so on. He's usually too distracted to help the PCs unless they can convince him to do the right thing and return the object he's agonizing over. Actually, I'm glad you asked this. I have a few quirks and other little aspects I like to bring to my table. Crafting. I don't like the boring processes used in D&D for crafting magic items, especially when you might have culturally renowned smiths and legendary crafters. I usually grant my players rewards, loot, or pieces of creatures with ideas on how to use them. For example, a displacer beast pelt can obviously be used for a cloak, but its blood could, say, have a wizard's cost when copying a spell into their spellbook. Feat training. Like with languages or anything else, I give my players the opportunity to declare a feature, ability, or skill that they want to train. I have them describe the nature of their training, since sometimes players will ask to train charisma just by talking, which is obviously not enough. Singular consistent world. All events I run across all my parties and one-shots happen within the same world, allowing players to help me actually shape the setting, from ancient history to current events. Of course, things that are established facts in the present day aren't up for grabs. Ascensions, paths, prestiges. For play past level 20, I have content that takes my players up to godhood and up to level 40. This allows them to fully multi-class or specialize further. At level 20, I even let them choose another subclass as a form of prestige to gain those benefits. Crit protection. Pretty self-explanatory. I probably have a lot more, but I'm working at the moment, so this is all I could get down. My one most identifiable quirk is that I have one particular NPC who will show up in every game I run. No matter the system, no matter the setting, at some point, Torvat the interdimensional dairy merchant will show up in some form. He is inescapable, he is inevitable, and he has the best cheese. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know in the comments below, what are your little dungeon mastering quirks? If you want to support the channel, make sure to leave a little bit of love by joining our membership program. You get early access to videos and keep the lights on running for all of us here at MrRipper. We love you all. See you next time. Toodaloo for now.